Mortal Kombat has some of the most dysfunctional relationships in gaming history, from manipulative sorcerers binding warriors through grief to literal gods locked in wars that predate human existence. Today, I'm breaking down the most toxic relationships in the entire franchise, and we're starting with the one that's genuinely heartbreaking. Liu Kang and Kitana. Here's the thing about Liu Kang and Kitana. They're the only couple on this entire list where nobody is the villain, and somehow that makes it worse. Their romance started the way every doomed love story does, across enemy lines, during a tournament designed to determine the fate of entire dimensions. Earthrealm's chosen champion fell for Outworld's princess. Totally normal foundation for a healthy relationship. But here's where it gets sad. Every single time these two manage to find a moment of peace, some cosmic-level catastrophe rips them apart. Not a jealous ex, not a scheming sorcerer, just the fundamental structure of reality going absolutely not. Both of them adapted to it. Years of being pulled apart trained them to suppress what they actually wanted in favor of duty. He became Earthrealm's protector. She became Outworld's queen. Two people who genuinely loved each other slowly learning to stop needing each other, because needing each other kept getting them hurt. Then, Liu Kang ascended to Fire God status in MK11, which is great for the realms and terrible for maintaining any kind of human emotional connection. Their love didn't end in betrayal or a screaming match. It ended in a quiet, devastating drift. Two people who outgrew the possibility of being together because the universe literally wouldn't let them stay. Every other entry on this list has at least one person being actively awful. Liu Kang and Kitana just got unlucky on a cosmic scale, which is, not ideal. But if you think a sad ending is the worst a Mortal Kombat relationship can offer, wait until you meet the couple that turned mutual contempt into a marriage. Johnny Cage and Sonya Blade. Their entire courtship was built on verbal combat, not flirting, not banter, actual hostility that somehow, over the course of multiple timelines, produced a marriage and a child, which is, romantic. Here's the thing. Johnny and Sonya operate on a cycle that would make any therapist quietly close their notebook and leave the room. Johnny expresses genuine care for Sonya. Sonya reads it as mockery, because every other sentence out of his mouth is mockery. So why would this one be different? She rejects him. He gets hurt, but instead of saying that like a normal person, he doubles down on the Hollywood pretty boy act. Oh, you don't want sincerity? Cool, here's more sarcasm. And Sonya looks at that and goes, see? He was never serious. Rinse and repeat for literally decades. Their default communication mode is adversarial. Johnny mocks her intensity. Sonya dismisses him as a shallow celebrity with nice sunglasses and zero substance. Both of them use sarcasm as full body armor against anything resembling vulnerability. Neither one can access real intimacy because the only language they speak fluently is fighting. And the wildest part? Across multiple timelines they get married. They have Cassie. They build a family. But they never actually stop bickering. The relationship didn't get healthier. They just looked at the dysfunction and went, yeah, this is a feature, not a bug. They accepted the chaos as their love language. This is arguably the healthiest relationship on this entire list. Let that sink in. A couple whose idea of pillow talk is probably a roast battle is the gold standard here. But if you think passive-aggressive bickering is bad, wait until you hear about a relationship built on conquest, coercion, and one woman's soul being ripped from her body against her will. Shao Kahn and Sindel. Most toxic relationships have a beginning, a moment where things were fine before they weren't. Shao Kahn and Sindel never had that moment. This relationship was rotten from the very first second because it wasn't a relationship at all. It was a hostage negotiation disguised as a marriage. Here's what happened. Shao Kahn murdered King Jared, Sindel's husband, and the rightful ruler of Edenia. Then he turned to Sindel and essentially said, "Marry me, or your daughter dies." That's the courtship. He took Kitana as leverage and forced Sindel into a union she never wanted with the man who killed the person she loved most. Which is, not ideal. But here's where it gets genuinely dark. Shao Kahn didn't just keep Sindel through fear. He maintained control through a cycle of brutality and fake affection, alternating between threats and moments of what almost looked like warmth. Just enough kindness to make her question whether things might get better. Just enough cruelty to remind her they never would. And over time, she internalized it. She stopped fighting. She started believing she deserved it, that this was simply what her life was now. That's not a red flag. That's a permanent state of psychological destruction. The real fatality came when Sindel finally discovered the truth. Shao Kahn never cared about her, not even a little. Kitana was the point. The throne was the point. Sindel was just the tool he used to control both, and her entire marriage had been nothing more than a political instrument wielded by a man who saw her as furniture with a crown. Every moment of supposed tenderness was calculated, and the worst part is she believed it long enough for it to reshape who she was. But if one-sided devotion sounds bad when it's forced, wait until you see what it looks like when someone chooses it voluntarily. Mileena and Baraka. This one's just sad. There's no other way to put it. Every other toxic relationship on this list has at least 2 participants. This one has 1.5, and I'm being generous with that half. Mileena developed an intense, all-consuming romantic obsession with Baraka. On paper, it makes a kind of tragic sense. She was a hybrid clone created by Shang Tsung to serve Shao Kahn's purposes. Baraka was a Tarkatan warrior operating on the fringes of Outworld's power structure. 2 outsiders built for someone else's agenda. Mileena saw a kindred spirit in it, someone who understood what it meant to exist because somebody else decided you should. She latched onto his ferocity, his independence, everything about him, and Baraka could not have cared less. Every overture she made was met with indifference at best, and outright cruelty at worst. She'd show loyalty, he'd show her his arm blades. She'd express affection, he'd respond with ridicule or just walk away. A normal person would take the hint after the first few rejections. Mileena doubled down, then tripled down, then kept going until the word down lost all meaning. Here's where it gets genuinely painful. Her fixation actively destroyed her. She betrayed allies to prove herself useful to him. She threw herself into danger hoping he'd notice. She sacrificed her own ambitions, her own identity, all for a man who showed zero evidence of ever viewing her as anything more than an occasionally useful tool. The real fatality finish isn't a specific betrayal or dramatic confrontation. It's the quiet realization that the relationship Mileena was fighting for never existed on his end, not even a little. She built an entire love story in her own head, while Baraka was largely unconcerned with whether she was in the room. He wasn't even cruel enough to be a proper villain in this story. He was just absent, which is, not ideal. But if you think one-sided devotion is rough, wait until you see what happens when Outworld royalty actually tries to make a relationship work. Kotal, Kahn, and Jade. Shao Kahn will scream at you, threaten you, and make it abundantly clear that he's the worst person in any room he walks into. Kotal Kahn, he'll smile at you. He'll put his hand on your shoulder, and he'll drain every ounce of loyalty you have without ever giving you a reason to leave or a reason to stay. Jade served as Kotal Khan's most devoted general. Not just a soldier following orders, but someone who genuinely believed in him, fought for him, bled for him. She cared about him. Everyone could see it. And here's the thing, Kotal Khan could see it too. But instead of reciprocating or being honest, he did something worse. He gave her just enough. A warm glance here, a kind word there, enough emotional breadcrumbs to keep her invested without ever committing to anything real. When Jade finally put her feelings out in the open, Kotal didn't reject her. That would have been too clean. Instead, he offered this tactical acceptance, acknowledging what she felt without matching it. I value you deeply, Jade. Cool. That's not the same thing, and he knew it. This is manipulation through plausible deniability. He never yelled, never hit, never did anything you could point to and say that's abuse. He just alternated between warmth and distance with surgical precision, keeping her permanently off balance and permanently useful. And when it actually mattered, when Jade was corrupted, enslaved, or destroyed across multiple timelines, Kotal let it happen. He didn't sacrifice his position to save her. He moved on because she was never a partner to him. She was a resource, one he maintained just well enough to keep operational. The relationship ended the way these things always end. Not with a fight, but with Jade quietly realizing that the loyalty she'd poured into this man for years was never genuinely returned. Which is, not ideal. But if you think quiet manipulation is bad, wait until you meet 2 people who turned betrayal into a competitive sport. Tanya and Rain. Every other toxic relationship on this list has at least one victim. This one doesn't. This is just two terrible people finding each other and somehow making it worse. Tanya and Rain recognize something in each other almost immediately. Not affection, not attraction, but a kindred spirit. Both of them had track records of betraying literally anyone the moment it became convenient. Tanya sold out her own realm, the entire Edenian resistance, without blinking. Rain abandoned every faction he ever joined the second a better offer came along. So when these two started working together, it wasn't a relationship. It was a business arrangement between two people with zero capacity for genuine loyalty. And here's where it gets weird. They both knew this about each other. Neither of them walked into this partnership with any illusions. They'd both watched the other betray allies, switch sides, and lie through their teeth. So from day one, the actual alliance was secondary to the real game, which was figuring out when the other person was going to stab them in the back and making sure they stabbed first. It's like watching two chess players who've completely forgotten about the board and are just staring at each other's hands. The whole partnership became this elaborate performance where both of them pretended to cooperate while running separate calculations about the optimal moment to bail. Rain would pursue his own agenda without telling Tanya anything. Tanya would build contingency plans that worked whether Rain lived or died. They developed this strange, perverted intimacy based entirely on mutual distrust. I know you're going to betray me. I know you know. Great, glad we're on the same page. And the ending? No drama, no screaming. One of them simply decided that eliminating the other was the mathematically superior play, and the other one had already prepared for exactly that outcome. Two snakes in a bag, and the bag finally opened. But if you think two manipulators trying to out-manipulate each other is chaotic, wait until you meet two beings whose entire existences are defined by opposing each other on a cosmic level. Havok and Hotaru. Every other relationship on this list involves a choice. Someone chose to betray, someone chose to stay, someone chose wrong. Havok and Hotaru didn't choose anything. Their conflict isn't personal, it's structural. It's baked into the architecture of the realms like gravity, or the fact that Scorpion will always find a way to be angry about something. Havok is the champion of chaos. Hotaru is the enforcer of order. Not metaphorically, these two literally embody opposing cosmic principles, which means their entire existence is defined by opposition to the other. They don't fight because they hate each other. They fight because the universe requires it. And here's where it gets genuinely horrifying. The more Hotaru clamped down, imposing stricter laws, harsher punishments, more rigid control over everything around him, the more Havok was compelled to tear it all apart. Every new rule was a new target. Every act of order was an invitation for chaos. And the more Havok succeeded in spreading that chaos, the more draconian Hotaru became in response. Tighter restrictions, zero tolerance, absolute authority, which gave Havok even more to destroy. It's a feedback loop with no off switch, an accelerating spiral where both sides become more extreme versions of themselves, specifically because the other one exists. Remember Tanya and Rain? Those two could have walked away at any point. They chose not to because they're both terrible people who enjoyed the game. Havok and Hotaru don't get that luxury. Walking away would mean abandoning their fundamental nature. Chaos cannot stop being chaos. Order cannot stop being order. They are the ideology. The relationship is the war, and neither can win, not permanently. Destroying Havok would eliminate chaos as a force in the realms, which would fundamentally break cosmic balance. Same goes for Hotaru. They both seem to understand this on some level, which might be the worst part. They know this fight never ends. They know there's no final victory, and they keep going anyway because they literally cannot stop. But if you think an eternal ideological stalemate sounds bad, wait until you see what happens when two actual gods have been trying to kill each other since before time had a name. Raiden and Shinnok, Havok and Hotaru can't coexist because their ideologies won't allow it. Now imagine that same problem, but both guys are gods, and the entire multiverse is their argument. Raiden and Shinnok have been at each other's throats since before Earthrealm even had a name. The Thunder God exists to protect. The corrupted Elder God of Death exists to consume. Their opposition isn't a rivalry that developed over time, or a friendship that went sour. It's baked into the fabric of reality itself. From the literal moment of creation, these two were a red flag. Here's the thing. Most toxic relationships have an escalation point, some moment where things spiral out of control. For Raiden and Shinnok, the escalation never stops. Every time Raiden strengthens Earthrealm's defenses, Shinnok interprets it as a personal insult and responds with something worse. Every time Shinnok launches a new assault on the realms, Raiden is forced to develop more destructive countermeasures. They're locked in a cosmic arms race where neither can back down, because backing down means the other one wins everything. The collateral damage from this cycle doesn't stay contained to one dimension. It bleeds across every realm, threatening the stability of existence itself. Cool. That's also a thing that happened. But here's where it gets genuinely chilling. In some timelines, Shinnok doesn't just attack Raiden, he corrupts him, turns the protector of Earthrealm into a weapon against the very people he swore to defend. Dark Raiden isn't just an alternate costume, it's the ultimate expression of what makes this relationship so poisonous. The toxicity doesn't just exist between them, it turns inward. Shinnok figured out that the most efficient way to destroy Earthrealm wasn't to overpower its guardian, it was to make the guardian do it himself, and neither of them can actually finish this. Destroying Shinnok disrupts cosmic balance. Destroying Raiden leaves Earthrealm defenseless. They're two gods permanently locked in a war that can never produce a winner, only more destruction. It's not a relationship at this point. It's a natural disaster with feelings. But if you think divine parasitism is bad, wait until you see what happens when the parasite is literal, and she's standing right next to the throne, D'Vorah and Kotal Kahn. Every toxic relationship we've covered so far has had a moment where the mask slips. A betrayal, a fight, a line crossed. D'Vorah never had that moment, because D'Vorah never wore a mask that fit poorly. Hers was seamless, custom built, and she wore it every single day for years without a single wrinkle. Here's the thing about D'Vorah. She didn't infiltrate Kotal Kahn's inner circle through force or intimidation. She did it through devotion. Absolute, unwavering, suspiciously perfect devotion. She positioned herself as his most loyal servant, the one advisor who never had a personal agenda, never pushed back too hard, never made him feel threatened. She was the one person in Outworld who seemed to want nothing for herself, which, should have been the red flag. But Kotal Kahn bought it, and honestly, you can't blame him. D'Vorah didn't just play the part of a loyal servant, she engineered an entire ecosystem of dependency around herself. She systematically undermined his other advisors, quietly sowing doubt about their competence and loyalty, until Kotal Kahn started trusting her judgment above everyone else's. When he ignored her counsel, things would mysteriously go wrong. When he listened to her, things worked out. Funny how that kept happening, and that's the genius of it. Every single action she took appeared to serve Kotal Kahn's interests. Every piece of advice seemed designed to strengthen his rule, but the net result, every time, was that actual power transferred a little more into her hands. She was conducting a slow-motion coup disguised as loyalty, and Kotal Kahn was thanking her for it. The betrayal, when it finally came, wasn't a snap decision. It wasn't emotion. It was the conclusion of a plan that had been running since day one. D'Vorah's entire relationship with Kotal Kahn was a calculated performance, and the final act wasn't just losing his throne or his military advantage. It was losing his ability to trust anyone ever again. She didn't just take his power, she poisoned the concept of loyalty itself, which makes her arguably worse than every openly hostile enemy he ever faced. At least with them, you know where you stand. But if you think a bug lady playing the long game is disturbing, wait until you hear about a sorcerer who built an entire revenge quest on a lie. Scorpion and Quan Chi. Every other toxic relationship on this list involves someone exploiting an existing situation. Quan Chi did something fundamentally different. He created the situation. He orchestrated the murder of Scorpion's entire family and clan, then walked up to the grieving, rage-filled specter he just created and said, "Hey, I know who did this to you. Let me help." That's not manipulation. That's engineering a human being from scratch. Quan Chi didn't stumble into a position of power over Scorpion. He built one. He murdered the Shirai Ryu, pinned it on Sub-Zero, then offered Scorpion exactly what a freshly destroyed man would want: a target and the power to reach it. From From that moment on, Scorpion's entire existence belonged to Quan Chi. His rage, his purpose, his identity as a revenant warrior, all of it was artificial. Every kill Scorpion made in the name of vengeance was really just Quan Chi pressing a button on a weapon he'd personally constructed, and the control didn't stop at the initial lie. Quan Chi maintained it through magical compulsion, psychological manipulation, and carefully timed breadcrumbs of false hope. He'd periodically dangle the possibility of resurrection for Scorpion's family, keeping him obedient, keeping him useful, keeping him pointed at whatever political target Quan Chi needed eliminated that week. Scorpion wasn't an ally. He was a guided missile with feelings. Here's where it gets genuinely bleak. When Scorpion finally learned the truth and destroyed Quan Chi, he won. Technically, but what did he actually gain? The realization that centuries of fury had been manufactured, that every enemy he'd torn apart was either innocent or irrelevant, that his entire post-death existence, every scream, every chain thrown in rage, had been a performance written by his abuser. Killing Quan Chi didn't undo any of it. It didn't bring back his family. It didn't return the centuries he spent as someone else's weapon. Scorpion got his revenge and was left standing in the ashes of a life that was never really his to begin with, which is, not ideal. But if you think a sorcerer manipulating one person is bad, wait until you see what happens when two sorcerers try to manipulate each other. Shang Tsung and Quan Chi. The deadly alliance is what happens when two people who are fundamentally incapable of trusting anyone decide to trust each other, which is to say they didn't, not for a single second. Shang Tsung and Quan Chi formed their alliance for one reason and one reason only: math. Two sorcerers working together could accomplish what neither could alone. They knew this. They agreed on this. And then they immediately began planning how to kill each other once the math stopped working in their favor. Here's the thing. Most toxic relationships have at least one moment where both parties are genuinely on the same page. A honeymoon phase, a shared goal that briefly overrides the dysfunction. These two skipped that entirely. From day one, the deadly alliance was a mutual countdown to betrayal, where both parties were simultaneously cooperating and preparing to eliminate the other at the strategically optimal moment, which is, not ideal for team synergy. Both of them gathered power in secret. Both developed contingency plans that didn't include the other surviving. Both withheld information about what they could actually do. When something went right, both claimed credit. When something went wrong, both pointed fingers. It was like watching two con artists try to run a scam on each other while also running a scam together. Hey Quan Chi, great work on that conquest. Thanks Shang Tsung, I was definitely going to mention you were involved. Eventually. The dark irony is genuinely beautiful. These are two master manipulators, arguably the best in the entire franchise at deception and scheming, and they created a partnership where manipulation itself made cooperation impossible. They were so committed to being evil that they couldn't even be evil together effectively. Every ounce of energy that should have gone toward conquering the realms went toward making sure the other guy didn't get the upper hand first, and the ending? Mutual destruction, the perfect conclusion for two people who absolutely deserved each other. Neither got what they wanted. Neither outsmarted the other in any way that mattered. They just canceled each other out, like two negative numbers that add up to zero. Turns out, honor among thieves requires at least a trace amount of honor. These two had exactly none between them. But if you think two sorcerers backstabbing each other is messy, wait until you hear about the power struggle between the original ruler of Outworld and the guy who stole his entire kingdom, Onaga and Shao Kahn. Every relationship on this list has some kind of endpoint, a betrayal that sticks, a death that matters. This one doesn't have that. This one never ends. Onaga, the Dragon King, was the original emperor of Outworld, not a conqueror who took it by force. The actual, original ruler whose existence was fundamentally tied to the realm itself. He built it, he shaped it, and when he needed a powerful subordinate, he brought in Shao Kahn and gave him everything. Authority, resources, a seat at the table of the most powerful dimension in existence. Shao Kahn repaid this by systematically planning Onaga's assassination and stealing the entire realm for himself. Here's the thing. This wasn't a desperate power grab. Shao Kahn was plotting this from the moment he arrived. Every act of loyalty, every display of deference was performance. He studied the Dragon King's weaknesses, consolidated his own power base in the shadows, and when the moment was right, he struck. Your most trusted subordinate, the one you elevated from nothing, taking everything you built. But here's where it gets complicated. You can't just kill the guy who created your entire dimension. Onaga's existence was woven into Outworld's fundamental structure. Destroying him completely would be like ripping the foundation out from under a building while standing on the top floor. So every time Shao Kahn thought he'd won, Onaga would reconstitute. He'd claw his way back from whatever prison or death Shao Kahn had engineered, and the whole war would start again. Then, Shao Kahn would reassert control. Then, Onaga would return, over and over, across virtually every timeline, consuming so many resources that it literally destabilized Outworld's dimensional structure. An entire realm fractured, not because of some external invasion, but because two guys at the top couldn't stop trying to destroy each other. This is the only relationship on this entire list defined by perpetual warfare, with zero possibility of resolution. Scorpion eventually got his revenge on Quan Chi. Shang Tsung and Quan Chi's alliance collapsed on schedule, but Onaga and Shao Kahn, there is no victory. There's just an eternal loop of betrayal and counter-betrayal that has outlasted entire civilizations. One created the opportunity, the other exploited it, and neither will ever forgive the other for it. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.